This thing of you and being a foreigner. What's the story? Rise had, if I'm not mistaken, they've been going to places where they find, whether it's poor governments or potholes, etc.
Oh, yes.
And making videos.
No, they like making videos, which is a good thing. The infrastructure is under severe strain. The challenges are bigger. We're looking at about 250 billion of our backlog. Protests are constitutional, right? But do it peacefully.
Welcome back to Palatable Politics with me, your host, TJ Maslela, and welcome to the show. In today's show, we've got a special guest that's going to break down Joburg, everything that's happening, and what we can expect from it. Our special guest is none other than the Executive Mayor of Joburg, Mr. Dada Morero. Welcome to the show.
No, thank you, Tapman.
So you have gone from being a student activist with COSAS, working in intelligence, to mayor. Can you explain the transition?
No, well, for young people at that time who lived under oppression, it became a natural choice to participate in the struggle. Because of what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis actually helped to conscientize. And then it was easier for me to find myself being in the student politics, which then I think I grew from there politically. Of course, with the ANC being unbanned, then we took the struggle much further with the establishment of democratic institutions. We also participated in there. There was integration processes. Some of us went to the police, the army, and others were integrated into the civilian intelligence service. So it was a process of building democratic institutions post-apartheid. And I think we had the responsibility to ensure that we see that transformation in those institutions, and hence we accepted. Eventually came back into local government, which also meant being active once again in the politics of the ANC. I worked in government administratively, also in local government. And in 2011, then there was a shift. I was then requested to go and avail myself for the regional secretary of Johannesburg, which was a full-time position, which I served the full-time position for at least 11 years.
The longest serving, ne?
So far,
Okay.
the longest serving in terms of trying to build branches of the ANC. Went through a number of challenges. We also went through a number of successes during that leadership of Comrade Parks, and then it was Comrade Jeff Makubu as the chairperson, and eventually I succeeded Comrade Jeff Makubu, and I was elected the chair, of which I'm still the chair right now. So then eventually I was then appointed as a councillor. Served in council, became the mayor for 25 days. The DA took us to court, we lost the case. Then I was given the responsibility of finance to try and stabilize the finances of the city with the bigger challenges that we have there. And then with the reconfiguration after the ANC had adopted a particular coalition framework, then it meant therefore that I would then ascend into the position of mayor, and then basically that's the transition. But remember, as activists, we do not know what the destination will be. We don't know our destiny except that we're in service, and if the ANC deploys wherever they would want to deploy us, it's how we're trained and it's how we're prepared in the ANC, and we accept the fate. Our fate is decided by our movement.
Having been on both sides of intelligence and in governance, local governance in particular, what's the relationship, if any?
Well, I wouldn't say there's any relationship to that extent, except to say local government is quite a complex and very challenging sphere of government. You'd know that local government is there, the coalface of service delivery. the funding model of metros is reliant on the money that metros themselves can raise, which is up to 70% of our budget is the money that we raise, which you'd understand that with unemployment, with challenges that people are faced with, they're also unable to pay for the services that they receive. It gets worse being in a metropolitan city like Johannesburg, where we're experiencing immigration. It's just over 10,000 people, or at least, coming to Johannesburg on a monthly basis. An average of just around 100,000 or so annually that have to come to Johannesburg to find opportunities. And that continuously puts pressure on our infrastructure. As you know, that part of this urbanization that we are experiencing, it's unplanned, it's rapid, it's sporadic, and as such, it affects our ability to can plan. And thus, we are faced with huge infrastructural challenges today.
Let's go into the finances, right? Can we start by the letter that you received from the finance minister?
Yes.
What did that stipulate?
Well, the minister was concerned on the following issues. One, the issues around unauthorized and irregular wasteful expenditure, and that we are not dealing with it and we are not reporting sufficiently on it. And we then had to give a report that, one, for the longest of time, the disciplinary board was removed, which meant when we came back into government, we had to start the process again in 2023. Eventually in 2024, we were able to set up the disciplinary board, which is now in place. It's proper because the law specifies what needs to be done with unauthorized, irregular, wasteful expenditure. But you must investigate, you must take this to the council. Council must approve the investigation, which therefore goes to the disciplinary board. The disciplinary board therefore investigates and brings the findings to council and then institute whatever disciplinary process that needs to be done. Two, we've got what we call unpack in the municipality, which unpack also deals with unauthorized expenditure. They looked into the reports and they make recommendations whether they would want to condone this particular report, or they feel that an investigation and criminal charges or recouping the money should happen. So that's the process that we are in. So the letter was really emphasizing those issues and the fact that they believe that there's recurrence on some of the issues. So we had to act. And we then responded to the minister sufficiently on the issues that she has raised. For example, it's sitting at about 23 billion, but we have indicated that 12 billion of it has now been regularized. Because remember, unauthorized irregular expenditure does not necessarily mean that money was lost in the system.
Can you give an example of how something becomes or is unauthorized or irregular?
I'll make an example about us having to build a substation in Roodepoort. We had not budgeted for it. When we arrived there, the Zamazamas have actually digged under, of course, in search of whatever resources they're searching for. The substation is just sitting here, almost about to collapse, which meant almost 10-kilometer radius of people would not have had electricity in the entire, which is actually the entire Roodepoort, if we're not able to immediately intervene and rebuild the substation and move it from here to a much safer place.
Okay.
That meant you have to now reallocate resources that you did not budget for from somewhere. And that's what we did, which of course in terms of the books it will come out as unauthorized because it's not part of your budget. You didn't pass it on your budget. Then we've got wasteful expenditure, which may mean that the city did not receive the value that it should have received. Money was spent, goods were delivered, but we did not receive the value. For example, we decide that we are going to have a mayoral launch forever.
One of the campaigns. Example, like a bomb squad.
Let's say that we are going to, the mayor will launch some event. And in the process of whatever planning we do, there's a change in plans, but we have already procured. Now the services have been received, but it's wasteful in the sense that that event did not take place. But we have procured, we have followed the procedure to procure. It becomes wasteful in that sense. We also have instances where it's irregular. Irregular because the processes that we have used to acquire might have missed certain steps. So unauthorized, you didn't budget for it. Irregular, certain processes of procurement or supply chain may not have been followed properly. Wasteful expenditure, goods have been received, services have been received, however, the event might not have happened. So we didn't receive the value that we should.
Where does corruption come into it? What component of all of these is the part that they're saying there's corrupt expenditure?
Wasteful expenditure, it could, of course, have led to some form of some corruption. But at the center of the issue is that you have received the services, but you didn't get the value you should have had because the mayor did not launch the program, which creates a problem.
No, so understand those.
It can also mean that it's irregular in the sense that you have purchased vehicles, but in purchasing the ambulances, the spec that was agreed to was not followed. But the service is there, the cars are there, but it's not on the spec that you went out on tender on. So those things will then raise flags into this process. So we'll look into those things, but the point that needs to be emphasized is that goods and services would have been received, but we might not have got the value we're expected to receive. And that's what the UIFs, Ws are all about. But it's an important thing that one, you regularize.
Yes.
The FMMA gives you steps clearly on how you must regularize. That is why 12 billion of it have been regularized. And I think another 2 billion is going to cancel. It's from unpack now for us to investigate. And those that are found to have been in the wrong must therefore be charged. And there's about 735 million, which is wasteful expenditure that's being investigated. And once the disciplinary board concludes in its investigation, it will then mean that those responsible will have to be charged. And then there are cases in which we're able to successfully charge. And I know one
this is the
case,
accountability component.
because you have to do some consequence management. And I know one instance where they said an official immediately resigned and left the system, but they're following up on that particular official. The only thing that we need to do once the reports of the disciplinary board are concluded, I think it's time we communicate publicly some of the successes of the disciplinary board. It will then help us to reduce these issues around corruption, because we would have reported how we acted, and demonstrate to taxpayers, to ratepayers, that indeed we are acting on those that are found to be on the wrong side of the law.
So sticking on the finances, right, and the financial sustainability, how do you deal with people that don't pay for services? And how do they get away with it?
Well, there are instances. You'd find that you have people who deliberately breach meters. And it's not only domestic, it's also business.
Okay.
And constantly, as we do our rounds, we then establish that, in fact, this customer has breached. Then we act on the power customers by either sending a letter of demand or cut off completely services from that customer, change the meters. We have to do all those things to get them. Especially with business, we are not friendly. Once we establish that, we act and we act aggressively.
What's the penalties for businesses?
No. We cut you off. We remove the meter and we expect you to come and pay. And once you have settled the account, then we will then restore your services. So it's important that we also make a call to businesses not to breach meters. Businesses, when they are faced with financial challenges, they should come and approach the city so that we can discuss and find better ways to help them to pay their account as opposed to them breaking the law. It might have consequences which are not good for the business. So come forward. Every business will have challenges. They must be able to come and say, the last 3 months, the business has not been doing well. And these are the challenges, these are the market challenges. How can the city also help me? Because we also have an interest to keep the businesses in Johannesburg, because it helps towards job creation, it helps towards increasing our revenue base, it also helps in a number of things. So that is why it's important that businesses should come. Domestic, yes, it's a challenge. We've had a lot of people who have lost their jobs.
This is the individual component.
That's
that
domestic.
If I, as a ratepayer, can't pay.
Yes, your house.
Okay.
We also send out notices. We also encourage customers to come and make arrangements with the city on how they are going to pay their arrears. But we also acknowledge that some people have lost their jobs. We then encourage them to come and register on our indigent register so that we know that you are indigent, you have no any other form of income. So how do we manage your account? It's a bit of a challenge. And that's what we try and do in other instances. Once you are indigent, there are certain rebates that we put in place to support those customers. For example, when you're on prepaid electricity, if you're indigent and you're registered on our ESP, we do not charge you for availability charge. So that 200 rands that we charge for availability, we don't.
Do you guys, it's a flat 200 every month or per recharge?
No, it's not per recharge, it's monthly. It calculates the number of days and then it charges on a monthly basis. So you may find you buy now and then the second one we take something, the third one we take something, or we take it at a part. And you may find that you didn't buy the last 3 months, you are able to see, and when you buy, we take it, you buy again, we take it, then you think that it's on purchase of the token, but no, it's because you had owed. So people then say, no, buy tatile food. But the person forgets that last month they didn't buy, they did not recharge, and it also already gives us a red flag that they could also be a breaching of the meter.
I won't lie, I thought I was dodging the system because I also try to buy
impulse
that I don't necessarily.
But there's an education that we constantly give our prepaid customers, because it also it increases as the tariffs moves on. So if tariff is higher, you buy at the higher tariff. So we constantly try and give education to our customers to try and help them to consume electricity much better.
Still on the electricity. Well, okay, now moving to the electricity component of it. We had load shedding. Then they said load shedding was done. Now we hear load reduction.
Well, there's load reduction. We also try and balance the systems so that the system does not collapse. It's an important part of what we must do.
Well, what is
when
load
there's
reduction?
Too much pressure? Load reduction is basically saying that we're going to reduce you in this area so that we can supply this area. Now, load shedding will come and say, for City of Johannesburg, it's level 1. Then we take from everyone.
What would the rationale be?
Reduction is basically to try and balance and not have a total blackout. Remember, Eskom would say, at this particular time, we can only give you so much electricity. And cities must then start saying, okay, we've got pressures there, we've got pressures there. Sandton has too much pressure as your business district. Who do we then load reduct? Do we reduct these domestic areas to protect business at this particular time where business is too active, and we know at night industries have closed, so we'll then do the reduction there but supply something because the restaurants are running throughout until 11-12. So that's that type of balancing that you do without switching people off.
So
completely.
is it fair to say that load reduction is a more strategic
type of
load shedding? Okay.
I think in simple terms you could do. I'm not any technician, but in simple terms that's what we'll probably say. And we're working towards, of course, you must constantly increase your capacity. And I think Eskom is constantly trying to increase capacity so that we also get out of load reduction, especially to ensure that industries can run.
And then touching on the infrastructure of the city. What's the current state of it?
Well, the infrastructure is under severe strain. The challenges are bigger. We're looking at about 250 billion of our backlog in terms of addressing our aged infrastructure, whether it's roads, it's water, it's electricity. It requires us that we raise the capital constantly to address this problem. You remember that Joburg is now a city of 5.8 million people. Was it designed for that? It's a question we need to answer. And the growth is continuing in the south, uncontrolled, unplanned, putting the strain. I mean, if people come here, set up an informal settlement, the next thing they do is to look at where are your water pipes. And once they establish the water pipes, they put their own pipes there to extend so that they can have supply. Now, it puts a strain of what you've already planned in terms of your water infrastructure. Similarly, they go and connect illegally into your street poles, into any other form that can then supply them with electricity. Then it puts a strain because you have this particular infrastructure for this particular number of people. Now it stretches them. In some instances, it then affects your suburb, your normal established township gets affected as a result of illegal connection. For example, in Lenesia, they're experiencing water pressure, which is quite low. And this is as a result of the informal settlements that have connected into the system.
So how do you fix that as a
We constantly go and do illegally and cut those illegal connections. A few days later, they're back into reconnecting. We go back against an endless cycle, which requires us to develop a sustainable solution. Now, City Power is working on what we call microgrids. The intention is to try and remove illegality by providing microgrids in informal settlements, which requires us to also raise money to do so. A 1 megawatt, you're looking at about probably just around less than 50 million or so to try and set up. I think it's a 4 megawatt or a 1 megawatt, around those figures. So we need to raise money to be able to do those things. In that way, then you reduce illegality because people will then have electricity from our microgrids, which is a solar propelled, and it will help us a lot. So we've done one in Alexander, we're doing another one in the south. We'll hope that it will reduce the problems. Same way, Joburg Water is looking at particular areas where they will then do boreholes and structure them in such a way that they're able to supply the area without communities going into illegal activity of connecting illegally. So those are the options that we are looking, but those options themselves require money. So you need to then look at resources, look at funding for you to be able to do those interventions.
The water, How close are we to finding a solution so that everyone can have a
No,
permanent,
we are
sufficient
busy.
flight?
The biggest thing that we said Joburg Water should demonstrate now is reducing our losses with at least 10%.
This is leakages.
Joburg Water in terms of leakages, illegal connection, so that those losses are reduced at least by 10%. If we can reduce them on an annual basis by 10%, it means in the next 4 years we'd have reduced them by 40%. They're currently at 46%. So we have to reduce them so drastically because the water losses affect us in terms of our bulk purchases. We spend so much money buying water from rainwater, but we're not realizing the return because we are losing water as a result of pipes that are leaking and as a result of illegal connection. So we are losing a lot of water. We are also providing water, by the way, through tankers, especially to informal settlements, and there's no return. So we're probably spending around 300 million or so or less around annually to supply the informal settlements with water and toilets, what they call VIP toilets. So there's money being spent and part of the money we're not getting it back. Yes, there's grant funding money or equitable share that we receive. However, it remains not sufficient to cover the costs that we normally cover.
Yeah. So yeah, with regards to the cost of things, I know it was reported there's 700 million for potholes. I know the pothole situation in Joburg is bad, but 700 million, how did we get there?
700 million would have referred to almost a total budget that we have put in place to deal with road surfacing, bridges, potholes. I think the manner in which the question would have been placed at that time did not recognize that the response was covering what we have put in place for road infrastructure, which will deal with resurfacing of roads, which will deal with this. So the total budget in essence is about 1.2 billion that we've put for road infrastructure, and probably 700 million on it will then be focusing on this, and the other balance will be focusing on other things that we do at the Johannesburg Roads Agency. And I think that's what we're trying to communicate. In Hyde Park alone, or Region B, when we made our analysis in terms of roof surfacing and potholes, it was about 4 million, if not 2 million, which was the entire Region B. And the other region, I think Region C, around 2 million as well for potholes and for resurfacing. So I think the response when the question was, the response did not actually come out clear as to what we were meaning. I mean, you can't say 700 million for just potholes when one pothole probably will not cost you more than 150 rands or 200 or so, depending on the nature of the material that you use. And the material that we used in Region B, it's our own material from our own ash flood plant. And
like a state-owned plant?
Yes, this is JRA has its own ash flood plant. So we used the material from there. We are starting to reinvest in making our ash flood plant work. It has not been working for some years. We brought it back into operation, so we use that, and it's more quality because it's not cold, it's hot asphalt, because we've got cold and hot, and cold necessarily would lead to the potholes re-emerging much quicker than when you use hot asphalt. So that's what we are doing.
So currently, when potholes are fixed and then they come back, it's because they're using cold and not hot.
You could have used cold and the rainy season might be too hot, which forces us that. But once you use the hot one, you are likely to have it staying much longer. The only problem that the city has now, we're trying to get the correct equipment. They call it with the right technical names, but what it means is that it will transport the asphalt and keep it hot as we
Okay.
work throughout. So it's an oven of some type,
okay.
if I were to use my layman's language, to keep the ash flood hot as we work around a particular area. So that's what we're also working on, to purchase and procure that, and then it will help us to move much quicker. But the view that we have taken is to focus more on resurfacing, because resurfacing is likely to give you another 10 years before the road can start giving problems.
Yeah. Can we take a step back to say, what is a pothole and how does it come about?
A pothole, there's a lot of things that causes the pothole. It could be the rains, it could be cracks that might have happened, and those cracks were not dealt with on time. Over time, it extends in the township. They put up a tent and they
Okay.
yeah. and they dig on the road to put up those poles so that the tent can hold. They remove them, then there's a hole, then the water starts coming in, it leads to a pothole. And we've been trying to educate in the township that don't dig up our roads, use the dustbins, fill it with a lot of water, and the tent will still hold, because water will have more pressure and it will hold. And that's what we're trying to educate in the communities. In that way, we'll be likely reduce the impact of potholes in the townships. Burning of tires during protests, and they burn the tires on the roads, and we keep on saying protests are constitutional right, but do it peacefully. Engage with government through a march, protest. You don't have to burn tires, you don't have to put up rocks on the road. We hear you and we will respond to your calls.
Still on the element of infrastructure and a big infrastructure thing that we've had, hijacked buildings, especially around CBD. Can you walk us through how a building gets hijacked and I guess what's being done to fix it?
Well, there are a number of options that the syndicates would use. For example, it's a government building and you probably took people in there on a temporary basis, and eventually they don't move out. Then there's a syndicate that takes them over, forces them at gunpoint to pay rental, and they pay rentals to the syndicate. The syndicate guarantees that they will not move out of the building. That's what the syndicate guarantees.
What's the stage during?
Collects.
Okay, no, sorry, conclude.
Now they'll find different ways. If government comes on that day, they'll mobilize, come out, try to stop, because you can shoot at them. The court says you can't remove them unless you have a court order, and you must have found them an alternative accommodation. Now, it's cost for government to set up alternative accommodation, which is why it has been taking us this long to deal with hijacked buildings as we'd want to do. Now, what we have done, we do have court orders, by the way.
Okay.
The difficulty is to effect them until you have found alternative accommodation. Now, working through the presidential working group to try and find solutions to creation of temporary accommodation. So there are proposals, and amongst them is allow the private sector to help us with temporary accommodation. In that way, we think we'll have a better solution. But the teams are working there to finalize that environment. Not so long, we think they will finalize a better proposal and a better sustainable solution. Once that happens, we can go on a massive rollout, massive implementation of the court orders, and remove the people to temporary structures and take these buildings back into the market and give it to the private sector for redevelopment and repurposing. And that's what we want to do. There's just around, in the inner city CBD, just around 38 to 45, which are city-owned buildings.
Okay.
And there's over 400, which are privately owned buildings that have been hijacked. Now we are working with the private sector to try and sort out that environment. It's a question of willingness, commitment, and focusing on the project that we are going to succeed. And I believe we will succeed, but as government alone will not succeed. But importantly is the type of people you find in hijacked buildings. And I think most of the time we don't talk about the resident. Now, we've profiled quite a number of those buildings where you find there's people who are completely unemployed. All what they have to do on a month to month is to find the 800 to pay to the syndicate and find food. Because electricity and water, they get it for free because it's illegal connection. You then have undocumented and illegal immigrants.
That's one I thought you were going to
in
start
the
with.
buildings.
Okay.
Who are there? Unemployed, some of them, some employed. You don't have an interesting category of young people who work in consultants, in restaurants, young people who also stay there. The cost of rent is much lower, much lower. They can afford the rental and they can walk to work. Now you've got that category of people. Then the last category, of course, is general people who work everywhere else here and they want better places and are willing to pay the rentals within a particular
range.
Range. Because anything above 4,000 is too high, but anything between 1,000 and 1,008 is proper for them, they can afford. And they want that space, and it's difficult to find that space in the inner city. And that is why with our Joshko intervention, Joshko is our housing company, we are starting to repurpose some of these buildings at rentals between 800 to 1,800 to 2,000. So we are trying to do so that we can accommodate this bracket of people who want to pay, who want a decent place, a clean place, but they can only afford rentals under 2,000. Anything above is difficult. We're making the same intervention in terms of student accommodation, because students can also afford the range that is subsidized by NEFSAS. Anything outside of what NEFSAS gives, they're able to afford, which is the problem currently with student accommodation. So with our Joshko policy, we are able to give them rentals up to 2,500 for students. So we are starting now. We've got 2 buildings that we are repurposing. Hopefully by next year, January, February, we should launch those buildings.
With the hijacked buildings, right? So let's say you guys have got the court order, followed the process. Now you're going to effect the eviction. When you effect the eviction, as you said, there are these different categories. What happens to them? I know you're supposed to get them accommodation, but now what? Even if a person is undocumented, do you still provide an alternative? What happens to them?
No, the law doesn't prescribe for undocumented and illegal.
Okay.
So normally Home Affairs come with us when we do the operations to evacuate, and those who are undocumented and illegal, it's a Home Affairs problem. So Home Affairs must then follow its own processes and take them away with an intention, of course, to deport them back to their countries of origin. So that's Home Affairs. South African citizens, yes, we are required to find alternative accommodation. Most of the time, once we remove, let's say there's 100 families, we are likely to end up with about 40 families agreeing to move to a place, and the rest of the people disappear. We have seen it in the last building that I did, and they disappeared. That is why I said there's also a category of young people. Okay. There was a young person who came out with his own things there, collection Vascom, I don't know.
Okay.
So he came out with his Vascom and a Juve cover and you could see it's few things. It's just for him to survive. But he goes into a polo. 20, I think it's a 2017 or so model. He goes into the polo, proper, nicely dressed, but the conditions in which he lives in,
He was just putting his head down.
So for him, it's just probably just sleeping, wake up, use his Vascom, and then go to work. He drives a polo, probably has a good job that probably pays about 12,000 or 15,000, 12,000 or so. So he's trying to save on the rentals so that he can probably send money home. So we are now catering, as what we are doing as Josco's an intervention, is to cater for that category of people who can afford a bachelor of the size at 800, and a one and what I call a one room of 1,008. We have done one building with 155 units right in the inner city in Ward 64, and is working well.
With regards to immigration, I know you indicated that the population of the city is 5.8 million. How many of that are undocumented, and what is the plan to do with that?
No, I don't know how many will be undocumented. I think Home Affairs might have the right figures. I don't know. But there's a huge number in Johannesburg. Again, Johannesburg has attracted possibly 90% of those who 80% of those who are in the country legally, because probably Johannesburg is an economic hub, and everybody believes once you're in Johannesburg, you stand a chance of getting a job, you stand a chance of running a business. Opportunities are there in Johannesburg, so they flock to Johannesburg. So you've got the highest concentration of those who are in the country legally, including asylum seekers and refugees. Majority of them, you'd find them in Johannesburg.
How much of the crime that we see in inner city is foreign versus local, undocumented versus local?
Well, you'd know that part of our work is enforcement of bylaw enforcement, and that's what we do. We also do a bit of crime. We do crime prevention as part of the mandate of JMPD. I'm unable to give figures except to wait for the stats, as in when the South African Police Service gives us the stats. But crime is crime. Whether it's done by a Zimbabwean or by South African, it must be classified as crime. Unfortunately, that once it's done by undocumented, it means you are likely not to be able to trace the offender, which is a problem because you don't have records. That is why we must act and act decisively against those who come into the country illegally, get them, round them up, and deport them back into their country of origin. In that way, you are reducing your inability to can get to the perpetrator. Because once a crime is committed, the next step is to find the perpetrator. Now, if your ability to find the perpetrator is limited as a result of not having fingerprints, etc., it's a problem. So rather stop the problem before it happens by not letting them into your country.
You touched on law enforcement, right? JMPD. What's the difference? So where does JMPD start and end versus SAPS? What's the difference? Who does what?
No, SAPS has to investigate core issues, murders, drugs, all those core criminal issues. JMPD necessarily reinforces and gives support, but in terms of bylaw enforcement, it's our number one. We have to ensure we enforce the bylaws. We do roadblocks, stop and search. Those are our mandate. Crime prevention, yes, if there's a car stolen here, JMPD should also support the SAPS, trace the car, follow the car, and stop the vehicle. There's drugs being sold and JMPD has a tip-off, they will go in there and SAPS will come in as a backup and they will hand over the cases to the SAPS. Other cases, JMPD will have to follow and also be the ones that give evidence in court. So it basically gives support to the police, but our main function is by law enforcement to ensure that we enforce the bylaws in the city.
Thank you for that. So we've covered...
And traffic management is our function.
The tickets that you guys send us.
Tickets, robots. I hope you don't have tickets here.
I'm working on them. I have some. Okay. I'm working on them. Yeah. Okay. So we've covered a lot of the specific issues. How much of a role has the political instability in the city played in the success or challenges that we've seen over the past couple of years?
Well, we had a vision that was given out at the beginning of local government.
This was 2011.
No, local government was 2000, in 2000 in particular, just around 1996. And you had a clear vision of where you were going with the city of Johannesburg. And you could see that albeit the challenges that were there, you could see that there's a strategy towards 2040. There's efforts been made to get Johannesburg to a particular city. And that is why a slogan emerged, or a theme emerged that said it's a world-class African city. And we were saying, let's look at tenets of what a world-class African city is, and we were acting towards that. Smart city issues. That is why we established the JMPD, because you are now saying you are a world-class. You established the JMPD, you moved it from just being a traffic management into a proper police department. As part of that vision, you looked at the infrastructure and said, how do we change our infrastructure? How do we invest in infrastructure? You then developed the 100 billion infrastructure development program, which we established in 2014 to focus on infrastructure, because we were aware that the infrastructure is ailing, it requires refurbishment. We implemented 100 billion with an intention of spending at least 15 billion on your capital budget annually.
Capital being infrastructure?
Capital infrastructure. Okay. And you could see that in 2013, 2014, we started budgeting around 10 billion with an intention of, I think in 2014, if I'm not wrong, we're able to reach the 15 billion mark. And the intention was that for you to address this thing, you must make sure that on your capital expenditure, you've got sufficient to try and aggressively address this thing, because by then you could see that the infrastructure is going to be a problem. 2, you ensured that there's no land invasion in Johannesburg. You did everything to ensure that it does not happen. In 2015, we're sitting at about 200, just around 240 informal settlements. By 2017, they mushroomed. Now we're sitting at 312 informal settlements. So there was a basic addition of just around 80 or so informal settlements in a very short space of time. So we needed to do that to protect the infrastructure. And you could see that the whole lot of land portions were able to protect them against land invasion, because we are aware what it will do on the infrastructure. Then you then say, what do? You increase on what you invest in terms of human settlements. So that the idea was to try and undermine land invasion by making sure that you increase on your stock for human settlements. Now, 2016, unfortunately, the ANC lost power.
Yes.
And I'll be frank and honest. Well, the other people would feel that we're just talking, but facts on the table.
Yes. That there was a change.
Says
the local
you left
election.
government with a surplus of 5.2 billion in the bank. You did not have what you're having now with the finances of the city. You didn't have an additional just over 18 formal settlements that are so big and you're unable to control them. Yes, you still had over 200 hijacked buildings because you needed to finalize and implement your strategy to respond. And you lost power at that moment. You had hoped that, because it's going concern, that the new government will focus. Instead of the new government focusing, it dropped the ball. Informal settlements mushroomed. Number two, instead of focusing on your finances, you destabilize your revenue and finance department by accusing senior managers of corruption, which led to them being fired, or some voluntarily decided to leave the system because they were constantly told or reminded that they are corrupt. Then it collapsed your whole finance system in the city. It just collapsed. That is why you ended up no longer having a surplus. Instead, having a deficit, which we started seeing it in 2018, a deficit of just around 2.5 billion, meaning that you are unable to support your budget by 2.5 billion. And we have seen the trend. We have tried to reverse the trend. It has been very stubborn.
So you're saying in those 2 years, the DA-led coalition...
3 years.
Those 3 years. Okay. Yeah. It went from a 5 billion surplus to a 2.5 billion deficit.
Yes. The records are there to show it. It's something that they can't hide. They are there. But I can't belabor that point. We must move on and say, what is it that we're putting in place? We then said in 2023-2024 budget that we must focus on revenue collection. And we agreed with National Treasury. Our budget was approved in an assumption of about 86% revenue collection. We've increased in this year. It was at 87. We have kept it at 87. We're lucky we had 2 months where we're able to collect at 90%. We've got a project that we have put in place. It's called Project Lukisa. The intention is to go and find money from all these people who are owing the city. There's a lot of people not owing the city. So we need to then reduce our debtors book, which is sitting around probably around 50 billion or so, with probably 11% of it not collectible, but the rest is. So we must go out there, collect the money and bring it into the city. And that's what we're focused on. And we are going to see the results as we move on. I mean, if we're 2 months success of 90% collection, it means we can. All what we need a right attitude from our senior managers in the finance department and the general workforce to help us to get to that 90% on a month-to-month basis. And that's what we are working towards.
With that said, and one is also fully aware of the politics and political parties, etc. But from that duration of the DA-led coalition in charge, what would you say they did do right?
They did right?
Yeah.
Let's check the annual reports and we can comment on the basis of the annual report. And our annual report will demonstrate that we've did well in terms of the clinics that we have built, the infrastructure we've put in place in our clinics, and our annual reports will demonstrate that. It will demonstrate what we have been able to do in terms of our influence as a government in international platforms, even national platforms, being given the opportunity to host international events, being the G20, the U20, that we are hosting this year as the city of Johannesburg. So our reports will demonstrate. I guess let's look at the reports that they've done. We're doing well in terms of immunization of children. We've increased We're doing well now. We've sorted out the indigency register, the indigent register. We're doing very well. People are registering. We've addressed the problem since that period where it was just sitting at 18,000 people. We've addressed it now. I mean, you can't have a population of 5.8 million, but your indigent register is sitting at 18,000. So we're sorted out, and you will see that the numbers are proper. So our reports will indicate the number of roads that we've been able to build, the number of housing units. We're doing what we call Luferen, which we launched a few years ago. It's supposed to give us about 24,000 housing opportunities. Like 2023, we launched the Southern Farm development, which is going to give us about 40,000 housing opportunities. And in fact, we have started the site establishment. We are now working on the biggest program, and hopefully we will get the necessary funding for bulk infrastructure. It's called the Grand Central in Midrand, which will deliver about 80,000, which is a legacy project, which means we would have done well as this coalition government if we were to deliver. 80,000 It has never been happened in South Africa. It will be a first of its kind. We're continuing with Luferen development, where we are doing wonders. But what I think we've also done well was to start in this financial year to put money for the Lenseria Smart City development, which is going to attract about 500,000 residents into the future.
Is there a timeline on that project?
Ours as the city is really to unlock the wastewater treatment plant. Once we have done that, it will be a boom. Everybody will be flocking to Lenseria. So we have started, we have put some money. Hopefully national and province will also help us into the next financial year so that we can complete the 4.5 billion bulk infrastructure in terms of your wastewater treatment plant and bulk infrastructure. So once we have done that, we would have unlocked the Lenseria Smart City, and our reports will then demonstrate that this key flagship project we were able to deliver, and we must drive them as this coalition, what we call government of local unity. We are driving those things.
So the plans sound great, no? Agreed, everything makes sense. How do you intend to manage the coalition politics in achieving this?
No, we've got a process of managing political coalition. We've got a political management committee that from time to time sits, look at key issues of government. We give updates, we debate them. We've got different parties who are part of the coalition government in the form of the MMCs.
Which are the current coalition partners now?
The ANC, the EFF, Patriotic Alliance, African Independent Congress, about 14 to 15 parties that have come into a coalition, and we update each other through that political management committee, and we think it's working very well. Where there are challenges, there's a dispute resolution process, which then involves our provincial leaders and national leaders to try and resolve where there's a dispute or where we don't see eye to eye on a particular issue. So far, it has been working well. We've been meeting our milestones. You know that on the 1st of September, we will be officially opening the Lillian Ngoyi Road, which had an explosion about 2 years ago, and now finally we have delivered on it. There were challenges, but on the 1st of September, I will be there to open it officially. Then the second phase will follow. We are now doing the entire road, extending the pavements, putting trees, and putting walkways and street furniture to beautify Lillian Ngoyi Road.
What happened? What caused the explosion?
There was an explosion. People said it's gas. There's a report to that effect.
Was anyone held accountable for it?
There's an investigation that is continuing on that score. Until they've concluded, it will then know was responsible for it, but there was an explosion, and our task is to sort out the road.
Okay.
And somebody must then sort out the investigation to say, this is what really happened, this is what caused the explosion.
Rise had, if I'm not mistaken, they've been going to places where they find, whether it's poor governments or potholes, etc.
Oh, yes.
And making videos. You guys...
No, they like making videos, which is a good thing. They keep us on our toes. So if there's a service delivery failure here, respond. It's just that, of course, the political party, they're also doing it for electioneering. But once we have sorted out the service delivery failure, Rise does not go back and make a statement that, yes, the matter has been sorted out. So they want to keep it as if it has never been sorted. So our responsibility is then to demonstrate as the city that it was sorted out. But it's a good thing that they keep us on our toes. It's a good thing that the DA will also say they are in opposition. They must keep us on our toes. So there's a service delivery failure here, you are not responding. It helps us. We must constantly do so. We've got a team of inspectors in all the wards. We also hold them accountable to keep departments on their toes. We've had an issue about Joburg Water and JRA, where Joburg Water will come and dig, and JRA must come and sort out the digging. And there's been a tug of war in terms of the budget, because J Water must then pay before JRA can do the work. So we've sorted out the internal issues. We've made it clear to JRA do the work, and finance will ensure that Joburg Water pays for the work we have done. So those are some of the service failures that we have, but we are focused. We are building an organization that, in fact, unfortunately, was destroyed internally, subverted internally. Now you must rebuild it so that this organization can respond. And that's why we've introduced skills from other people to come back and help us to restore the city.
In closing, what would you say citizens or residents, rather, of Joburg have to look forward to in the remainder of your term as mayor between now and the next local government? Oh, that's next year.
The local government elections are next year. The biggest thing is to ensure that infrastructure, especially the water infrastructure, we ensure that we've repaired, we've refurbished, so that by the time the term ends, at least bulk of it has been restored. There are no bigger challenges. Two, same with electricity infrastructure, road infrastructure. Ensure that we make the daily living of our customers make their daily living to be happy, their daily experience to be better of the city that they live in. Driving from home, the robots must work. Going to work, the robots should be working. Leaving your house, you should have a warm shower because your electricity is working and there's water supply. Those are the basic services of the city to ensure that they are proper. And I think that's the drive that makes me wake up every morning, go to work, to ensure that we can drive these things for our residents and give a better daily living and experience of Joburg.
Last question. I can't let you go without asking. This thing of you and being a foreigner, what's the story?
TJ, if you can spend your time with those social media people, I think you'll go crazy. Dada Morero is born in Orlando West. Born of a mother from Bergville in KZN, may her soul rest in peace. A father who's born from Modimolle and came here while she was young. I think was still 2 years or 3 years. And they settled in Orlando West. My grandfather, Mr. Morero Mapalla, married a lady from Potchefstroom, a Makene lady, and they settled in Orlando West. And
So you are a South African
went
citizen.
to school to Mkholokwane combined school. Went to my high school at Pefeni Secondary School. Been an activist all my life. So, Sefane ke Morero. So basically, I'm a full South African citizen. Social media decided to even give my son a Nigerian name. They said it's Olesen. My son is Kamukelo. He's born in Johannesburg, in Soweto. He has no links with any family in Nigeria. But that being said, I remain an African.
100%.
And I'm proud of my Africanness. And I'm proud of my brothers and sisters from any other African country who I'll continue to have relations with. I do have friends from Zimbabwe. I have friends in Tanzania who I've interacted with them in the past. I have friends in Kenya. I'm an African, so I should have friends in Africa the same way others will have friends in Europe. I have friends in Africa.
Thank you. Thank you for making time.
Thank you very much, TJ.
Guys, thank you very much. Tune in. Please hit the subscribe button. It really does help us in terms of growing and bringing you more of this. Like, subscribe, share. Palatable Politics.